Welcome everybody back to the best practices track. I see some new faces since our last presentation, so just as a little reminder, the best practices track is a little bit different than what we normally do. Normally we'll have a brand side marketer kind of telling the story of their campaign. In this best practices track, what we're going to do is we're going to have a brand side marketer who's going to be kind of joined by a thought leader who's really helped them along with their campaign. My name is Ken Bowen. I am Senior Manager of Digital Analytics at Mech Labs Institute, parent company of Marketingsherpa. I am pleased to be joined today by Steph Brower and Frank Dana.
All right. Thank you, Ken.
Steph, Frank, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Steph, before we really get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about HP?
Yes. So, can you all hear?
You have to yell.
It's on? Yeah, good? Okay. My name is Steph, and I've been doing social marketing for HP for about 5 years. I've worked in both the PC side of the house, consumer and commercial, and as well as print. So yeah, that's been my role for about five or 6 years. And I was also on the HP account agency side for about 6 years before that. So I feel like my whole life's been HP. And HP, many of y'all have probably seen a PC or a printer that we make, but founded in Silicon Valley, 78 years old. We split off 2 years ago into HP Inc., which is the company that I'm still with, and then Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So that's more the softwares and servers side.
Great. Steph, can you also just tell us a little bit about HP's target customer? What type of customer you guys typically target?
Yeah, for sure. So at least right now in this space where we're talking about Snapchat, our target audience was the younger millennials, even younger than that, Gen Z. And you know, from a PC perspective, you know, we know that these people are very technologically savvy. They're very authentic. They don't want a brand that's just, you know, not being authentic or true to themselves. So we really had to, you know, kind of find where's the sweet spot to talk to them and then how to talk to them.
Great, and you kind of hit on it with the demographics, but I know from our earlier conversations that HP was really one of the first companies to go into the Snapchat space of your peers. What was it specifically about Snapchat that really excited you? Yeah,
so, you know, as a brand, we don't want to just like jump all in and not check all our bases, and, you know, we really wanted to test and learn the platform and make sure that it was a really good fit. So 2.5, 3 years ago, when Snapchat was really starting to boom, you know, we put kind of a little tiger team together to do a bunch of research, talk to the platform, you know, do a lot of our homework to make sure that it wasn't just going to be a flash of the pan and we were investing all this money for it to just be, you know, gone the next 6 months down the road. But we really saw a lot of traction with Snapchat. So, and we looked at our competitors, what they were doing, what they weren't doing. We really saw a huge opportunity for a tech brand to do something in this space. We didn't see any other brands. And then, you know, then what were we going to do on Snapchat? So we had to kind of define our voice, what could we own, what topics could we talk about, what was our purpose going to be? We're going to entertain, we're going to educate. So we really had to just kind of think through all those things before we jumped in.
Great, and I understand that in order to help you out, you brought in a real expert in the field. Frank, welcome.
Hey guys, my name is Frank Dana, and I'm the content director at Softway. So my role there is a little unique. My agency was acquired by Softway in 2014. It started around Vine, RIP Vine. We created a lot of content within the short form ad agency that I co-founded. We were acquired by Softway, and so now I'm balancing my roles between content strategist and content creator, and sometimes influencer, as you'll see in some examples for the Snapchat content that we built. But my agency is located in Houston, and the brands that you see on the screen are brands that we've worked with specifically on Snapchat. We've launched UNICEF and InStyle on Snapchat, and then have supported campaigns for Walmart, Yelp, and HP. But what I really want to do is catch you up. I know a lot of us know about Snapchat, so I just want this to be relatively quick, a little refresher. But Snapchat is weird and odd and strange and silly. It's also a mobile messaging tool, and it gives you the ability to communicate with other people. And through images, through text, through videos, they only last for about 24 hours, so you have to make sure that the content you want to share is interesting. And we could take about 3 to 5 hours to walk through the interface of Snapchat, because I assume that they hired a UX person and then immediately fired them, and they were like, we got this, you can do whatever, don't worry about it. So essentially on the platform, you can create content and then disseminate it either via the chat feature or the stories feature, creating stories on the platform. You can also engage with Discover content, which is essentially like publications creating some really engaging content on the platform. And finally, you can add friends, even though the discoverability on Snapchat is very different than every other place. And that's really what I wanted to focus on, is what makes Snapchat different. So let me ask you a quick question. On Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and LinkedIn and Twitter and some of the other apps that I forget about, when you first open it, what do you see? I'm asking you. You see a timeline. So your feed, right? You see a timeline of other people's content. When you open up Snapchat, what do you see? Yourself. You're like, oh my God, too many chins, perfect amount of chins. Right? So on Snapchat, it's different. All the other platforms are designed for you to lean back and consume content. Snapchat is designed for you to lean in and create content. So automatically, the platform is completely different than any other thing. It's 100% active. It drives you to create first before you consume second. And the deal is that consumption comes at a price, which is exclusivity, which kind of reminds me of a certain 90s television show. So in my estimation, Saved by the Bell and Snapchat are basically the same. What I mean by that is in the early 90s and late 90s and early 2000s, we didn't have DVR or Netflix or Hulu or anything on demand. Everything was exclusive. So for television, if you wanted to make sure that you were caught up, that you had what you needed for the water cooler the next day, you had to watch in the moment or else you lost it. So it's the same on Snapchat. It's extremely exclusive content. If you don't watch the moment it's posted, you miss out on something big, something that can actually build conversation. So Snapchat and Saved by the Bell may be the same thing, minus actually the t-shirts are back in style. They're the same. But in regards to how you approach Snapchat, I would say cautiously, very, very cautiously. Because for those over 40 trying to understand Snapchat, I didn't draw this or write this, but most of us agree with it. So this is really the goal here is we need to make sure that we understand how to properly navigate and use Snapchat effectively and really ask ourselves the question, is Snapchat the right platform for me?
Thanks, Frank. And I know specifically here in this best practices track, we like to really provide some tactical, real-world examples. So I understand that you and Steph worked on a Snapchat campaign together. I was hoping we could maybe just go through some of those steps, both in how you got your Snapchat kind of built up and grew your followers, and then kind of how you tested into your content. So, Frank, I understand you guys began by leveraging some influencers.
So yeah, HP started out leveraging large-scale influencers to promote the actual HP channel on Snapchat. And an influencer is essentially somebody who has a large amount of followers on a social channel. And what's really great about that is that they can actually help build brand affinity. And what I mean by that is if an influencer partners with a brand, all of the followers of that influencer will see that the brand has trusted the influencer and the influencer has trusted the brand, and there could be some connection between the followers of that influencer. So using an influencer is actually helpful for building brand affinity and trust when it comes to that brand wanting to engage. But there are a couple, I'd say, caveats in dealing with influencers. The first is that sometimes it's cost prohibitive. They're very expensive if you get up to the large scale, like super mega stars. And the second thing is it's difficult to maintain followers because the followers are sort of in this like herd mentality where if the influencer goes to a specific channel and creates content on that channel, all the followers will go there and sort of graze a little bit. And then as soon as the influencer goes away, they'll kind of follow suit. And the last thing that I really wanted to mention was brand misalignment with influencers. If the influencer doesn't necessarily align properly with the brand, then their followers aren't going to engage with the brand either. But there are some good ways to start building a foundation, a base of actual followers that you can then leverage afterwards.
Great. And Steph, do you want to maybe walk us through how HP used leveraged influencers in the beginning?
Yeah, so to kick off, I apologize. I don't know if this, okay,
there
it's working.
There it is.
Yeah, but here you can see several examples. When we first kicked off our account, we did the picture in the middle. We got 3 guys, went to Santa Monica. We did this big dare. It was kind of like a truth or dare, but it was more of dare or dare. And that immediately, within 24 hours, grew our account. I mean, we went from 0 followers. That was the weekend we kicked it off to like 30,000 in one weekend. But like Frank said, there's a lot of misalignment that happens. There's a lot of the image on with the microphone. That was at Cannes Film Festival. We brought Jerome Jarre over. The other one's a product video shoot. We brought in Chachi Gonzalez. She's a big YouTuber. So we leveraged her on set. We kind of did this behind the scenes. So it worked, I would say. They come, but Frank's exactly right. If they're not there consistently, so everyone might jump over to see Chachi on HP's channel, but next week we post something else and it wasn't Chachi, we saw a lot of ebb and flow. So I would say influencers worked for good bursts, but it was hard to maintain those followers over time, and ultimately they just kind of dwindled away. So you got to think about that.
Great, and from there, I understand that you kind of started testing your way into a more authentic brand voice. Could you maybe walk us through that process?
Yeah, so I think when we started Snapchat, we tried to approach it like we do all our other platforms, which is kind of this always on, if we're gonna do social, we need to do it right, we need to be consistent. So, we try to post we create a lot of assets for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram, and we were like, okay, well, we need to produce weekly content for Snapchat. We need to be all in, we need to test this and learn it. So, but it was all just kind of the Wild West, and we were just like throwing, darts at the wall and kind of misses, and the content was just kind of random. We try to kind of align it around maybe a product. Here you'll see a laptop that's great for music, so we did a little DJ episode, and it was all just kind of random. And then when we partnered with Softway, we got to thinking about, because we did this for about a year and a half, and I was just like, guys, this is just kind of stagnant. These episodes are not amazing. And then we found a topic that we thought we could really own, and it became just so natural and so turnkey. It was amazing. It was like we went from zero to hero overnight with this content series. And what we called it was What the Tech Wednesdays. So we felt it was something HP could own. It was tech, we're a tech company. And what it was like a 1 to 2 minute short episode that would educate someone on a processing unit, Bluetooth, what is Bluetooth, how did it get its name? All these different topics, and it became so easy for us. Management approved it right away. It was totally aligned strategically. It totally made sense and fit.
And we've actually got an example of What the Tech Wednesdays, if you would mind cueing it in the back.
Today we're talking about the processing unit. Why did you bleep that out?
They told me this would be like a graphic episode, so we added some censoring.
Graphic processing unit. Computers speak in binary, ones and zeros. This is what the Mona Lisa would look like if you didn't have a GPU. But the GPU translates the data into images we can actually see on our screens. There are two different types of GPUs, dedicated and integrated. Integrated graphics processing units are built directly onto the motherboard of your computer. If you're editing video or playing high-end 3D games, a dedicated GPU is right for you. That's because a dedicated GPU has its own processor and memory. It's like a computer inside of a computer. When you're choosing your next computer, pay attention to the processing unit. Really?
Yeah, that was real. That was real. Yeah, that
so
happened.
We did these weekly. They were great, and we worked with our, the more technical side of our business, the, like the scientists and the engineers behind this stuff. So we collaborated with them to confirm our facts, and then we output it in a really fun, digestible way for millennials, Gen Z. So we were actually teaching them tidbits, that they didn't have before in a really fun and educational way, in a way that was authentic to the platform. So if you notice, Frank did some face swapping, we did, sound effects, we did emojis moving on the screen, and then what this turned into was our engagement just like shot through the roof. So you'll start to see we got real-time, one-on-one responses and engagement with our fans. They were telling us how much they loved it. HP was their favorite brand. They never knew this before, so we were really seeing, positive one-on-one conversation.
Great, and from there, I guess it was just a matter of kind of turning it into a well-oiled machine once you hit on this concept that worked. How can you maybe just briefly walk us through how you did that?
Yeah, so once we got all the right players involved, management loved the new series. We worked with Softway and we got into a cadence where we'd have a script/really rough storyboard by Friday. We'd have a rough cut Monday morning or Tuesday. They'd send us an actual test snap. They would snap it on like a test account, download the video, send it to us. That way, if like my boss wanted to look at it and he's not on Snapchat, I could just shoot him over the file super quick, and then boom, the next day they would just execute. You know, we did things around Halloween. I mean, we have tons of these episodes that we did. It was great, and we never really ran out of content. There was so much to talk about.
Yeah, and what was interesting too is we started to kind of fine tune how much time the actual episodes should be, like what the actual length was. We realized that under 2 minutes is really key. 90 seconds is already a little bit long. And so we wanted to make sure that everything was kept very consistent for that time period so people knew what to expect week over week.
Great. And through the course of kind of HP's Snapchat journey, what would you say that HP learned?
Yeah, I think we definitely learned efficient content creation. But we learned that when we had the right content, that our fans engaged and they liked it, which is, we were not seeing that before when we were kind of flailing in the Wild West. So the one-on-one dialogue, when we actually found our stride, was really, really important to me. I think that was smart that we were connecting with our fans and our customers. But ultimately, what happened, and you know, we've been doing this for almost going on 3 years, the fan growth was a really challenging thing for us. We tried tons of things, and I think just Snapchat, the nature of it, the discoverability to find an account is very hard. We tried external promotion on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We did paid campaigns. Hey, go follow HP on Snapchat. You know, we'd give them a clip of a video. This is cool. You know, follow us every Wednesday for this. And it would ebb and flow. We'd get a little, but ultimately our follower base, we could not get, at least what we thought was a strong enough fan base to continue the content. So we've actually, and we've chatted with the Snapchat team, and they've kind of confirmed our notion of, so even though we found this great content series, we really don't think Snapchat's maybe the platform for it, and we're kind of moving to a paid approach on Snapchat. So, but having said that, we've produced really good content, and we've tested it on like Instagram stories and Facebook stories where what's nice about like an Instagram story is we already have like 700,000 fans on Instagram. So when we post it, it's given to all those people in their timeline. It's up at the top. They can press play. And when we tested this on Instagram stories, we saw like triple the opens that we currently had on Snapchat. So ultimately, as a brand, I think we tested and learned every possible thing we could on Snapchat. And ultimately, we learned it's good for probably a paid approach. And this always-on content creation is better for some of these other longer living platforms.
Thanks, Steph. And we thought we'd close today by giving Frank, I know you've worked with a lot of brands on Snapchat, an opportunity to maybe give some tips to the crowd about if they do want to go into the Snapchat space, maybe some things to do and some things to not do.
Absolutely. So there are a few things that we wanted to share with you to make it actionable today. So the first, from a Snapchat don't perspective, is don't be too salesy or pushy. Now you're engaging, if you're going to be engaging on Snapchat, you're engaging with a younger audience. So we're talking about 13 to 34-year-olds. If you try to be salesy, they'll run into a Jamba Juice and never leave. So you have to be careful that your content should not be ultra salesy or pushy, and it needs to bring people value. So like we talked about earlier in the keynote, the idea of value is incredibly important. Not just value about your brand or the actual item that you're trying to promote or produce or the service you're promoting, but what wisdom and experience can you apply to what you're creating to actually provide value. Inconsistent and sporadic posting is also an issue. If you wanted to post on a very consistent basis, like maybe once a week, once a month, twice a month, make sure that it happens on a consistent weekly basis so people know to expect that type of content. And then finally, I'm going to mention this again in the do's, don't overthink or overproduce it. Now, outside of Snapchat, that stuff that we showed you looked insane. But inside of Snapchat, it looked like Snapchat. It was exactly what people would come to expect. We used an app with the bleeper button on it to make the bleep sound. We had a microphone or another computer next to the speaker on the phone to make sure that we captured audio so that we tried to produce it as best we could within the limitations of the platform because it felt authentic to the individuals that are engaging with it on the platform, which brings me to my do's.
Well, and that was also that was something we had to overcome with our management and executives is when they started to see this, they were like, what? You're going to produce this? And we're like, guys, it's not a Wall Street Journal, page takeover. It's going to be okay. So the lower quality production and the real quick turnkey was something we had to overcome, and we did, ultimately.
Absolutely, and that's what a lot of brands struggle with, is they're like, this doesn't necessarily connect with my brand voice. Well, it does because it's connecting to the audience on the platform, and you want to be authentic. And you also want to be casual. So any of us that have our buttons all the way up on Snapchat, we need to kind of unbutton one, maybe two max, maybe two. we need to also talk to the audience like a normal person. So when you've got your phone and you're in selfie mode and you're talking and doing things like this, don't be awkward, or try not to be, because yes, you will look awkward to other people, but to the people that you're speaking to on Snapchat, it feels more authentic. And you shouldn't steer away from the actual platform. Don't be scared of the limitations of it. So I've worked with a couple different brands that actually produced everything outside of Snapchat, and then just took a phone and held it up to a 4K monitor and recorded the stuff on the monitor. And it didn't work. It looked completely fake, and it didn't engage with their audience. This is a very large, very reputable brand that's in the food services industry that makes delicious tacos and burritos. And so they noticed that it didn't work as well as it should have because they weren't engaging on this platform in the way that they should have been engaging. And then, again, don't try to overthink or overproduce. I know that's in the do's. I know it says don't, but it has D-O in it, so I thought I'd put it back. Make sure that you don't overproduce it and don't overthink it. And finally, our recommendation for a lot of brands out there is use Snapchat when you have something insane to talk about. If Kanye walks into your ice cream shop, it's time to open Snapchat, because you're going to get people to look at it. It's all about exclusivity, like we talked about with the 90s TV.
Yeah, and that's really how we've repositioned our strategy. So now when we activate around big events where we have some kind of exclusive presence, we did Panorama. There's a YouTube Fan Fest in Singapore. We're doing Coachella this summer. So we actually have live presence at the event. So there we're going to be advertising our handle, hey, follow HB Snaps. We're going to go behind the scenes with the Chainsmokers or whatever, so that's when we're going to activate, but then also couple that with a paid buy as well. If you partner with Snapchat, they have this huge calendar of all these live moments that they're going to be planning throughout the year, and like they have a Coachella live story, so we bought media in that, plus we'll be at the event. So that's kind of our big go live moments, and we've really steered away from the weekly episodic just because the follower growth is nearly impossible. So, and we love the content of What the Tech Wednesdays, and that's why we're repurposing it for those longer living channels like YouTube and Instagram. Absolutely.
So, ultimately, the goal is to be authentic and use Snapchat like a real user, and do the best you can to try to engage with them on their level, whatever level that may be.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And we do have a couple of minutes here, maybe 3 minutes, if anybody in the audience has a question. Questions? Well, if you do think of a question that you'd like to ask, I know Frank and Steph will be walking around. Steph is also going to be hosting a roundtable discussion, number 29, lessons learned in social this year. So feel free to register for that. And again, thank you guys so much for coming and sharing your story with us today. And we really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.